The next morning, Jennifer walked into the diner, only to be met with an unexpected disruption in her usual rhythm. On the counter, a sleek black package with a carefully tied bow stood out against the worn formica. Her boss, Claire, handed it to her with a raised eyebrow and a curious smile. "This came for you early this morning," Claire remarked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Looks like you've got an admirer." Jennifer frowned, noticing her name written neatly on the card, the handwriting unmistakable. Nicholas Hunter's. With a mix of hesitation and intrigue, she opened the package, revealing a leather-bound notebook with her initials embossed in gold. Inside, a handwritten note rested on the first page. "Jennifer, I understand this decision isn't an easy one, and I don't expect an answer overnight, but I hope this small gift reminds you of the endless possibilities ahead. Whatever you choose, know that your courage inspires me. Nicholas Hunter." Jennifer's breath caught as she read the note. It wasn't extravagant, but its sincerity disarmed her. Despite the world he came from, Nicholas seemed different from what she had imagined, genuine, real. Later that evening, Jennifer sat alone in her apartment, the notebook open before her. Words flowed freely onto the page, a mix of fears, hopes, and questions she'd avoided for so long. By the time she closed the notebook, a small but steady resolve had begun to take root within her. Whatever decision she made, it would be hers alone. For the first time, Jennifer felt a flicker of belief in herself. Maybe, just maybe, there was something greater out there waiting for her, something beyond the life she had always known. For the first time, Jennifer felt a subtle shift within her. A glimmer of belief began to take root, a quiet recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, she was capable of something greater than the small, predictable life she had always known. Sitting at her kitchen table, the leather-bound notebook Nicholas had given her lay open before her. Its blank pages seemed to beckon, waiting for the first word, the first thought. In the stillness of the evening, only the soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. James Hunter's note, tucked inside the cover, rested in her fingers. She traced its edges absently, lost in thought. It wasn't the gift itself that unsettled her, but the intention behind it. For a man like him, it would have been easy to offer something grander, something far more extravagant. Yet this small gesture felt personal, as if he truly understood her in a way she hadn't expected, or perhaps in a way she hadn't wanted him to. Her musings were interrupted by a knock on the door. Jennifer glanced at the clock. Late for visitors, but still, the knock echoed in the quiet room. After a moment's hesitation, she stood and opened the door to find Mrs. Katie, her elderly landlord, standing there, her face etched with quiet concern. The woman held a stack of envelopes, her hand outstretched. "Evening, dear," Mrs. Katie said kindly. "These came for you earlier. I thought I'd drop them off." Jennifer accepted the letters with a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Katie. You didn't have to go out of your way." "Nonsense," the older woman replied, waving off the gesture. "You're a good tenant, Jennifer, always have been." Her sharp eyes lingered on Jennifer for a moment, as if seeing beyond her words. "But you've seemed troubled lately. Is everything all right?" Jennifer hesitated, clutching the envelopes to her chest. "I'm fine, just a lot on my mind." Mrs. Katie nodded, her expression softening with understanding. "Well, if you ever need someone to talk to, you know where to find me. Sometimes it helps to share the weight." Jennifer smiled faintly, touched by the kindness. "Thank you. I'll remember that." As the door clicked shut, Jennifer returned to the table, flipping through the letters. Most were the usual bills, but one stood out. The return address was from Nicholas's foundation. Her curiosity piqued, Jennifer opened the letter. Inside was a formal offer letter detailing the position he had mentioned. The terms were generous, far beyond anything she had imagined. A monthly salary that dwarfed her diner wages, full benefits, and even support for her nursing studies. Her heart raced as she read the letter. The practicality of it was undeniable. Accepting the offer would change her life in ways she could hardly fathom, freeing her from financial struggles, offering a chance at something more. But with the excitement came fear, the fear of leaving behind everything she knew, of stepping into a world that was as unfamiliar to her as a foreign country. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. The next morning, Jennifer Parker carried the letter to the diner, hoping the comfort of routine would help her sort through the turmoil swirling inside her. The familiar faces of the regulars filled the booths, their chatter providing a soothing hum in the background. But even here, in the safe haven of the diner, Jennifer couldn't escape the whispers. A pair of women seated at the corner table exchanged glances, their voices dropping to hushed tones as she passed. Jennifer clenched her jaw, pushing back the sting of their words, determined not to let the gossip affect her. "Morning, Jennifer," Claire greeted her warmly from behind the counter. "You doing okay?" Jennifer nodded, slipping the offer letter into her pocket. "Just the usual," she replied, though the edge in her voice betrayed her unease. Claire, ever perceptive, gave her a knowing look as she arranged pastries on a tray. "You know," Claire continued, her tone soft yet thoughtful, "sometimes life hands you a chance, and it's scary because it's different. But different doesn't always mean bad." Jennifer paused, surprised by the insight. "What makes you say that?" Claire shrugged with a faint smile. "I've lived in this town a long time, seen people let fear hold them back from growing. You're smart, Jennifer. Don't let what's comfortable keep you from something better." The words lingered in Jennifer's mind throughout her shift, echoing the advice she had received from Julia and Mr. Davenport. But doubts still clung to her like shadows. What if Nicholas's world was too vast, too foreign for her? What if she failed to meet the expectations of a man like him? When her shift finally ended, Jennifer walked aimlessly, her feet guiding her to the park. The crisp autumn air invigorated her, the crunch of fallen leaves beneath her boots offering an unexpected sense of solace. She found an empty bench and sat, pulling the offer letter from her pocket. Reading it once more, she tried to picture herself in the role Nicholas had described, helping others, making a difference on a scale she had never imagined. "Still deciding, I see." Jennifer jumped at the sound of the voice, turning to find Nicholas Hunter standing nearby. His hands were tucked into the pockets of his coat, his expression calm but intent. "I'm sorry," he said with a small, apologetic smile. "I didn't mean to startle you." "It's fine," Jennifer said, quickly folding the letter and tucking it back into her pocket. "What are you doing here?" "Passing through," Nicholas replied, though the timing of his arrival felt far too coincidental. "I thought I might find you here. It seemed like the kind of place you'd come to think." Jennifer raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "I wanted to check in," Nicholas said, his voice genuine. "I know this is a big decision, and I don't want you to feel pressured. But I also don't want you to let fear hold you back from taking a step forward." Jennifer met his gaze, surprised by the openness in his expression. "It's not just fear," she admitted. "It's everything. Leaving Tyringham, stepping into your world. It feels overwhelming." Nicholas nodded, his gray eyes thoughtful. "It is overwhelming, but sometimes the best things in life are. You don't have to decide today, Jennifer. Just know that I believe in you." His words, simple as they were, struck a deep chord within her. As Nicholas walked away, Jennifer realized that for the first time in a long while, she believed in herself, too, even if only just a little. The decision had been made early that Monday morning. As the first light of dawn gently streamed through her kitchen window, Jennifer Parker hadn't slept much, the weight of the decision she'd made, keeping her restless all night. But as she gazed out at the awakening town of Tyringham, the place that had always been her home, something within her shifted. Maybe it was the simplicity of the moment, a quiet reminder that the world moved forward, regardless of the choices she had to make. Jennifer finally felt a deep sense of clarity settle over her. She picked up the phone, dialing the number on Nicholas Hunter's business card. It rang only twice before a crisp, professional voice greeted her. In 20 minutes, the voice on the other end of the call pulled the covers back. "This is Elliot Price, Mr. Hunter's assistant." Jennifer hesitated for a moment, her throat tightening. "Hello, Mr. Price. This is Jennifer Park." "Miss Parker?" Elliot said, his tone growing slightly warmer. "We've been expecting your call. How can I assist you today?" "I've made my decision," Jennifer said, her words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I'd like to accept the position with Mr. Hunter's foundation." There was a brief pause, a quiet recognition, as if Elliot had known this moment was coming. "That's wonderful news," he responded smoothly. "I'll handle all the arrangements immediately. If it's convenient for you, we can have transportation sent to bring you to the city by the end of this week." Jennifer blinked in surprise. "The end of the week? That's soon." "We can adjust the timeline if needed," Elliot replied, though his voice suggested he preferred to move forward swiftly. "Would you like more time?" "No," Jennifer said firmly, her nerves steadied by the resolution that had grown inside her. "The end of the week is fine." After confirming the details, she hung up the phone, her hands shaking. The magnitude of what she had just agreed to was beginning to settle in. Leaving Tyringham wasn't just about starting a new job. It was about stepping into an entirely new world. The days leading up to her departure were filled with preparation, along with goodbyes she hadn't been ready for. At the diner, Claire pulled her into a tight hug, her eyes moist with unshed tears. "We're really going to miss you, Jennifer," she said softly, "but I know you're going to do incredible things out there." Julia, however, was less sentimental, her enthusiasm bubbling over. "You're going to blow them away," she said, grinning as she helped Jennifer sort through her clothes. "And don't let anyone in that city make you feel small. You're just as capable as they are." Jennifer smiled at her friend's excitement, though the nervousness gnawing at her gut didn't subside. Tyringham had been her anchor for so long, and the thought of leaving it behind, of stepping into the unknown, felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Finally, the morning of her departure arrived, with a sense of finality. A sleek black car waited outside her apartment, attracting curious stares from her neighbors. With a suitcase in hand, Jennifer stepped out of the apartment, her heart racing with both anticipation and doubt. Mrs. Katie waved from her porch, a gentle smile on her face, but with an unmistakable hint of pride. "Take care of yourself, Jennifer," she called, "and don't forget where you came from." Jennifer nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She climbed into the back of the sleek black car, the door closing with a soft thud that resonated deep within her chest. As the car pulled away, she glanced back at Tyringham, watching the town that had shaped her life shrink into the distance. The familiar streets, the local shops, the faces she'd grown up with, all of them fading into the rearview mirror, leaving only memories. Ahead, the city beckoned, a gleaming maze of glass and steel, both beautiful and intimidating. By the time they reached the Foundation's headquarters, Jennifer's nerves were taut. She straightened her back, her hands clenched at her sides as she stepped out of the car. Elliot Price was waiting for her at the entrance. His appearance was polished, his sharp suit an effortless testament to his professionalism. "Welcome, Miss Parker," he said, extending his hand with a confident smile. "It's a pleasure to have you here." Jennifer took his hand, grateful for his composed demeanor, "Thank you," she said, her voice betraying the nervous flutter in her chest. "I'm still trying to take it all in." "You'll have time to adjust," Elliot assured her, offering a reassuring nod. "Let me show you to your office." The Foundation's headquarters was a world away from the simplicity of Tyringham. It was sleek and modern, with a buzzing energy that made Jennifer feel small and out of place. She walked past rows of focused employees, all absorbed in their tasks, their concentration as unbroken as the polished surfaces surrounding them. Elliot led her to a corner office, its large windows offering a sweeping view of the city below. The sight took her breath away. "This will be your space," he said, gesturing toward the elegant desk and bookshelves that lined the walls. "Mr. Hunter wanted to make sure you had everything you need to feel comfortable." Jennifer ran her fingers along the smooth surface of the desk, the reality of her new position beginning to settle in. "It's a lot," she murmured, barely above a whisper. Elliot smiled faintly. "Take your time, Miss Parker. Mr. Hunter believes in you, and so do we." The rest of the day passed in a blur of introductions, training sessions, and new faces. Jennifer met her colleagues who welcomed her with warm smiles, though there was a quiet curiosity in their eyes. She was an outsider, a small-town girl in a world of polished professionals. Late in the afternoon, Nicholas appeared at her office door. His presence filled the room, commanding it without a word. "How's your first day going?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe with an easy confidence. "It's overwhelming," Jennifer admitted, but her smile was genuine. "But in a good way." Nicholas nodded, his gray eyes thoughtful. "It'll get easier. You'll find your rhythm." Jennifer hesitated, then spoke with quiet sincerity. "Thank you for giving me this chance. I still don't know why you chose me, but I'll do my best not to let you down." "You don't have to prove anything to me," Nicholas said, his voice calm and steady. "Just be yourself, Jennifer. That's more than enough." As he left, Jennifer turned back to the window. The city stretched out before her, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. For the first time, she felt a spark of hope ignite deep within her, a flicker of belief that this new chapter in her life could lead to the future she had always dreamed of. Jennifer's first week at the Foundation was nothing short of overwhelming. The days began earlier than she was accustomed to, and the quiet of her Tyringham apartment was replaced by the ceaseless hum of city life. The once familiar streets of her small town had been replaced with the sleek, bustling energy of a place that felt like another world entirely. Her colleagues, all polished and impeccably professional, had a sharp efficiency that made Jennifer feel like an outsider. Their competence only emphasized her own insecurities, yet beneath her nerves, a steady resolve began to take root. She was here for a reason, and she intended to prove herself worthy of the opportunity. Jennifer found an unexpected source of support in Henry, Nicholas Hunter's longtime butler. He was nothing like anyone she had ever encountered. Tall and commanding, with an air of quiet authority, he had a presence that could not be ignored, though his eyes often sparkled with a gentle humor that softened the edges of his serious demeanor. On her second day, Jennifer found herself in the staff lounge, where Henry was preparing tea with the precision of a seasoned professional. He turned as she entered, greeting her with a deep, measured voice that echoed warmth. "Miss Parker, I trust you're settling in?" Jennifer smiled shyly, gripping her coffee mug tightly. "Trying to. It's a lot to take in." Henry studied her for a moment, his gaze contemplative but not unkind. "It always is at first," he said. "Mr. Hunter has a way of expecting much from those he brings into his circle." And he paused, his tone thoughtful. "He also has an uncanny ability to recognize potential," he added, a knowing glint in his eye. Jennifer blinked, taken aback by the remark. "Do you really think I have what it takes to do this?" she asked, her voice quieter than she meant. Henry's response was instant, as if he had no doubt in his mind. Of course. He wouldn't have offered you the position otherwise. Nicholas Hunter isn't a man who makes decisions lightly. The conversation lingered with Jennifer throughout the day, his words leaving a quiet but significant mark on her. The faith Henry had in her abilities, though unspoken, gave her a sense of reassurance she hadn't expected. It was the kind of calm confidence that she hadn't realized she needed, but now felt grateful to receive. As the days passed, their paths crossed more frequently, and a natural camaraderie began to form between them. Henry's dry humor, mixed with sharp insights, reminded Jennifer of the stories her mother used to tell. There was a quiet strength in him that mirrored the resilience her father had embodied. One afternoon, during a brief lull in the office, Jennifer found herself sitting with Henry in the lounge. He was sorting through a stack of papers while she sipped on a cup of tea. The conversation drifted naturally to Nicholas. "You've worked for Mr. Hunter for a long time, haven't you?" Jennifer asked, a genuine curiosity in her voice. "Nearly 2 decades," Henry replied, glancing at her before resuming his task. "I've seen him at his best and his worst." Jennifer hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "What's he really like, beyond the businessman?" Henry set the papers down, his expression softening for a brief moment. "Nicholas is complicated," he said, his tone thoughtful. "He's got a brilliant mind, but it's always restless, driven, sometimes to his own detriment. He carries burdens, ones he rarely speaks of." Jennifer leaned in slightly, her interest piqued. "What kind of burdens?" Henry's lips pressed together as he thought for a moment, weighing how much to reveal. "Losing his wife changed him," he finally admitted. "It was years ago, a car accident that left him grieving and riddled with guilt. Since then, he's poured himself into his work, trying to build something meaningful. Maybe it's his way of making up for what he couldn't control." A wave of empathy washed over Jennifer as she listened. Her thoughts flashed to her own experiences with loss, and she understood, more than she'd expected, the kind of pain that could drive a person to work tirelessly, to fill the silence with the hum of productivity. It explained the flickers of vulnerability she'd caught in Nicholas, the fleeting moments that hinted at a man who, despite all his wealth and power, was just as human as anyone else. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly, her voice laced with a softness she hadn't intended. Henry's gaze met hers, and for the briefest of moments, his expression held something unreadable, something deeper than his usual demeanor. "Because," he said, after a pause, "you might be the first person in a long while who has the ability to see him for who he truly is, not just what he represents." The words lingered in Jennifer's mind as she returned to her tasks. With each passing interaction, she found herself studying Nicholas more closely. She noticed how his gaze often lingered on the photographs that adorned the walls. The pictures captured moments of triumph, children's bright smiles in newly constructed schools, families content in their newly rebuilt homes. The images conveyed a dedication to something greater, a genuine commitment Nicholas had shown all along, though Jennifer hadn't fully appreciated it until now. But her adjustment to this new world was far from easy. Not everyone was as welcoming. When she first encountered Victoria Hunter, Nicholas's estranged sister, at a board meeting, the air was thick with tension. "And who is this?" Victoria's voice cut through the room, her eyes scrutinizing Jennifer with an air of practiced detachment. "The new project manager? Or is James simply indulging in philanthropy by hiring charity cases now?" The words stung, but Jennifer held her ground, forcing herself to remain composed. "Jennifer Parker?" she replied, extending her hand, her voice steady. "I'm honored to be part of the team." Victoria didn't even acknowledge the handshake, her smile cold and dismissive. "I'm sure you are," she said, her tone laced with condescension. Nicholas quickly intervened, redirecting the conversation to the meeting agenda, but the tension between him and his sister was thick, palpable. Jennifer couldn't help but feel the undercurrent of animosity as she quietly observed. Later, as the day wore on, Jennifer overheard snippets of their heated exchange in Nicholas's office. Victoria's voice, filled with frustration, rang out. "You're using her, James," she accused, her words sharp. "And for what? To distract yourself from the mess you've made of everything else?" "It's here because she deserves to be." Nicholas's voice was firm, his response tinged with irritation. "And what I do with my foundation is none of your business." The conversation left Jennifer unsettled, though it also hardened her resolve. She knew there would be doubts, people who questioned her presence or wondered if she was truly deserving of this opportunity. But Jennifer was determined to prove them all wrong. As the day came to a close, Jennifer sat alone in her office, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars. Her mind replayed Henry's words about Nicholas's burdens, and she couldn't help but reflect on the personal barriers she had already started breaking within herself. She didn't know exactly where this path would lead, but for the first time, Jennifer felt certain of one thing: she was exactly where she was meant to be. Jennifer didn't know where this journey would lead, but for the first time, she felt certain that it was worth pursuing. Her second month at the foundation began with cautious optimism. Jennifer had grown comfortable in her new role, finding a sense of fulfillment in the work. Coordinating initiatives that delivered medical supplies to underserved clinics and scholarships to aspiring nurses felt deeply personal to her. For the first time in her life, Jennifer felt her work aligned with the dreams she had carried since her teenage years, taking care of others, just as she had done for her mother. But beneath the surface, trouble was quietly stirring. The foundation, with its far-reaching influence and generous endeavors, had become a target for those who envied Nicholas Hunter's success. It began subtly: press inquiries about funding, hushed conversations in meetings about leaked documents. At first, Jennifer didn't pay much attention to the rumors, but by the time it reached her desk, ignoring it was no longer an option. Late one Friday afternoon, Jennifer discovered a manila folder sitting in her inbox, the tab with her name scrawled across it. Inside, she found articles from the news, anonymous letters, and emails casting aspersions on her past. Her family's financial hardships, her mother's unpaid medical bills, and her modest education were all laid bare. Jennifer stared at the pile of papers, her hands trembling. It felt as though the most vulnerable parts of her life had been exposed for the world to see. The door creaked open and Dennis stepped inside. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with concern. "You've seen it then," he said softly. Jennifer held up the file, her voice shaking with emotion. "What is this, Dennis? Why is my personal life being dragged into all of this?" Dennis closed the door behind him and sat across from her. "It's a tactic," he said simply. "Nicholas has enemies who would love nothing more than to see his foundation fail. They're trying to discredit him, and you've become an easy target." "That doesn't make sense," Jennifer said, her voice rising with frustration. "I've done nothing wrong. My past has nothing to do with the foundation." "It doesn't need to," Dennis replied, his tone steady. "They're using it to sow doubt, to suggest that Nicholas made a poor decision by hiring you. They're trying to tarnish his reputation." Jennifer sank back into her chair, the weight of the revelation pressing heavily on her. "So what do I do?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stay the course," Dennis said firmly. "You've done nothing wrong, Jennifer. Let your work speak for itself, and trust Nicholas to handle the rest." That evening, Jennifer Parker found herself walking the lively streets of the city, searching for solace among the bustling crowds. The lights and noise, so foreign yet strangely comforting, failed to ease the weight of her thoughts. She wasn't surprised when Nicholas Hunter called later that night. His voice, usually so composed, carried a hint of frustration. "Jennifer, I'm sorry this has happened," he said, his words steady but filled with concern. "I never meant for you to be caught in the crossfire." "It's not your fault," Jennifer replied, though the words didn't fully ease the knot in her chest. "But it feels personal, like someone's trying to tear me apart." "They are," Nicholas said bluntly. "Because they see you as a way to get to me. But I won't let them succeed." There was a brief pause, and when Nicholas spoke again, his voice softened. "You're stronger than you think, Jennifer. I've seen it. Don't let them intimidate you." As the call ended, his words stayed with her, echoing in the quiet of her apartment. Jennifer spent the weekend wrestling with her fears, trying to focus on the upcoming projects for the week ahead. She was determined to prove herself, no matter the obstacles. When Monday arrived, the atmosphere in the office was thick with tension. The air felt heavier with every passing minute. Victoria Hunter's arrival only fueled the unease. She entered the boardroom with her usual poise, her sharp eyes sweeping across the room before finally locking onto Jennifer. "So," Victoria said, her voice laced with disdain, "the charity case is still here?" Jennifer's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. "Good morning, Miss Hunter," she replied evenly, her voice calm despite the sting of Victoria's words. Victoria smirked, a cold glint in her eyes. "It's bold of you to show your face after the headlines this weekend, but I suppose you're used to hardship." Before Jennifer could respond, Nicholas entered the room. His commanding presence immediately silenced the murmurs, his very presence shutting down any further remarks from Victoria. Nicholas Hunter's presence in the room was undeniable. As soon as he entered, all attention shifted to him. He brushed off Victoria's sharp comment with practiced ease, stepping into the role of leader as he steered the meeting with calm authority. But for Jennifer Parker, the unsettling feeling of being under scrutiny never left. Victoria's cold gaze lingered on her, sharp and unyielding, watching her every move. Once the meeting adjourned, Jennifer retreated to the privacy of her office, her nerves frayed from the tension. She absent-mindedly scrolled through her emails, trying to regain her composure. But one subject line caught her attention. "Know who your real friends are." Despite her better judgment, she clicked on it. The email was brief, containing only a single sentence. "Not everyone in the foundation has your back." Her breath caught, and a heavy weight settled in her chest. The words sank in deeper than she expected. The seed of doubt was planted, growing quickly in the pit of her stomach. She stared at the screen, her mind racing. Who could she trust? The foundation, with its accomplished professionals, was now a maze of uncertainties. The recent attacks on her reputation made everything feel fragile. That evening, feeling more vulnerable than ever, Jennifer picked up the phone and called Julia. "I feel like I'm drowning," she admitted, her voice cracking as the weight of everything bore down on her. "Everywhere I turn, someone's waiting for me to fail." Julia's voice came through strong and clear, full of conviction. "Listen to me, Jennifer. You are not going to let these people get to you. You're there for a reason. They're scared of you because they know you belong." Those words hung in the air like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge. Jennifer clung to them, allowing the strength in Julia's voice to seep into her own resolve. As the days passed, she found herself leaning into that courage. The whispers and the stares didn't stop, but Jennifer was determined not to let them break her. She threw herself into her work with newfound purpose, driven by the need to prove her worth, not just to the foundation, but to herself. By the end of the week, Jennifer had crafted a proposal for a new project, one that aimed to extend the foundation's efforts to rural clinics across the country. It was her vision, her plan, and she was proud of it. When she presented it to Nicholas, his approval was swift and genuine. "This is excellent work, Jennifer," he said, his gray eyes locking with hers in an unspoken understanding. "You're exactly where you're meant to be." For the first time in days, a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. The challenges weren't over, and the road ahead still held its uncertainties. But in that moment, Jennifer realized her place at the foundation and in Nicholas's world wasn't as fragile as she had once feared. The foundation was now her home, and no matter what came next, she was ready to face it. Jennifer Parker's recent success in presenting her proposal had marked a shift in her confidence, but the obstacles were far from over. Over the next few weeks, she started to notice unsettling patterns. Files seemed to vanish without explanation, schedules were shifted without notice, and the lingering sensation that someone was observing her gnawed at her. It wasn't blatant, but it was enough to unsettle her, especially after the anonymous message she had received. The unease settled deeper, feeding her growing suspicion that something was amiss. One afternoon, while she was carefully reviewing project files in her office, a knock at the door startled her. Looking up, Jennifer found Dennis standing in the doorway, his usually calm demeanor now shadowed by concern. "Miss Parker," Dennis began, stepping into the room and shutting the door behind him, "I believe you need to see something." He handed her a folder, its contents arranged with precision, as always. Inside, Jennifer found internal emails, reports, and memos indicating clear signs of sabotage within the foundation. Her name appeared repeatedly, tied to discrepancies she had no involvement in creating. A cold knot twisted in Jennifer's stomach as she read through the files. "What is this, Dennis? Are they trying to frame me?" "It seems so," Dennis replied gravely. "Someone within the organization is deliberately working against you, and by extension, against Mr. Hunter. And Mr. Hunter is obtaining releases from those he thinks are lying about Mr. Hunter." Her mind raced, processing everything. The whispers, the misplaced documents, even Victoria's cold calculating behavior. It all started to make sense. But the idea that someone was actively conspiring against her left her feeling betrayed and deeply frustrated. "Do you know who's behind this?" she asked, her voice low but unwavering. Dennis hesitated before responding, his gaze unwavering as ever. "I have my suspicions, but I won't act without proof. What I do know is that this isn't just about you. It's part of a much larger effort to destabilize the foundation." Jennifer closed the folder with a sharp exhale, her heart pounding at her chest. "What should I do?" "For now, stay vigilant," Dennis advised. "And whatever you do, don't let them know you're aware. If we gather enough evidence, we can expose them." Jennifer nodded, though the unease that settled in her chest didn't ease. Dennis's calm confidence was reassuring, but the weight of the situation lingered, twisting deeper with every thought.